Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. And this week we are discussing Sinister.
Yes, and it feels so good to be back, which I said last week, but nobody heard because we had technical issues that rendered the entire recording unusable.
And I will never get over it, but we must move forward.
Yeah, spoiler alert. We watched Blair Witch. Briana hated it. I hated it. Nobody had a good time. I do love found footage horror movies, and I respect what it started, but it's not a movie I will be watching again, probably ever.
Yeah, me either. But it's like a rite of passage. It's something I missed out on back in the day. So it's good that I finally experienced it.
True. And I gotta say, you guys are really missing out on that episode because I was hilarious.
You can say that because no one's ever going to hear it.
Well, I can say that because it's true.
Okay. All right. So let's start with some movie credits. So Sinister was written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill.
The C is short for Christopher.
Oh, didn't know that. Directed by Scott Derrickson, starring Ethan Hawke as Ellison, Juliette Rylance as Tracy, James Ransoni as, well, in IMDb it says just deputy, but he's deputy so-and-so. And that's not me making it up. That's Ethan Hawke. Claire Foley as Ashley. And did you know who played the sheriff?
Yeah, that's, what is his name?
Fred Thompson, who ran for president.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was an actor before he ran for president.
Well, yeah, he's on Law and Order, or was. But that's the only reason why I included him, because I saw it and I was like, oh, that was Fred Thompson.
Yeah, okay. My dad used to watch, like, the OG Law and Order, so I recognized him from that.
And a summary. So we have true crime writer Ellison Oswalt moves his family to dig into a murder/missing girl mystery, planning to write his next book that will bring back the success from a decade ago, and finds himself wrapped up in something much bigger, darker, and deadlier.
Yes, I love this movie, and that is a great summary. When we were about to watch it, I think it was on like Amazon, and the descriptor said a washed-up writer, and my immediate reaction was like offense. I was like, he's not washed up, but then we watched the movie, and it's like he's kind of on the verge of washed up.
He's
but
washed up.
No, I don't think he's washed up.
He watches his old interviews from 10 years ago. That is the definition of washed up.
Well, I don't think washed up. That's personal trauma. That's unrelated. But I
don't think it's unrelated.
Like, yes, his last big hit was 10 years ago, but he is still supporting his family. Yes, they are struggling, but he's still supporting them as a single income, and he just published like 3-4 books in the last 10 years. So successful, no. Like rock star, no. But washed up, I think, is a bit strong.
Yeah, I guess he's just looking for his next big thing.
Yeah, and did you see that house that they moved out of, the original house?
Oh, yeah, that's in my notes, that they left a mansion to go move into a hellhole. So,
yes, which is...
I'm mad. I'm mad about it.
I'm sure that's also part of the money thing. But anyway, the short story is, don't call Ethan Hawke washed up on my watch.
All right, well, tell us your Rotten Tomatoes score.
So the Rotten Tomatoes score for this, it was actually surprisingly low. I know a lot of people that love horror movies that like this movie. I think this is, or I thought of this as a well-regarded movie.
Yeah, it's not, at least from like the reviews that I've read too.
Yeah, exactly. So Rotten Tomatoes, 63%, audience 61%, again, surprising. And, just kind of, I'm not part of the global horror community, I guess. I don't know, like... what horror fans around the world or country are thinking, but in my circles, everybody loves this movie in my circles. So I was a little surprised. 63% sounded low to me.
What'd you find for flesh wounds?
So our flesh wounds. The first is from the beginning of the movie. Ethan Hawke's character, Ellison, is wearing a Bennington college shirt, and I noticed it about 20 minutes in, and Briana was like, he's been wearing that the whole time. It was the first thing I noticed.
The second after the chunky sweater.
Yes. He was wearing a wonderful chunky sweater. That's a look I could aspire to reach someday. But anyway, so he's wearing a Bennington shirt. According to the director's commentary on the DVD, remember those? That was Ethan Hawke's choice. Ethan Hawke came up with that, and he said his character would have gone there and his character would have worn it. And the quote from the director is, "This just goes to show what actors do. They think about their characters," and he thought that would be the kind of extremely expensive, highly elitist school that Ellison would have gone to. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bennington College is in Vermont, right across the border. It's not super far from where we live now or from where either of us grew up. I didn't know that it was super expensive and elite. I knew one girl that went there. I would not describe her as rich or elite. And Peter
Wow.
Dinklage went there. Hey, look, no offense to her. I'm not rich or elite either. Peter Dinklage went there, and bonus fun fact, he was the lead singer of a punk band while he went to college in
So cool.
Bennington. But yeah, did you have something about Bennington there, Brianna?
First of all, the town is small. It's just this little, like everything else in Vermont, it's just this little town. So I just was, when I read this myself, I was also very surprised. So naturally, I had to look up the pricing of Bennington College. And for the 2021-2022 academic year, including room and board, it is $76,848.
And is that for the year or a semester?
That's for the academic year.
The academic year, $76,000. Okay, so let's say
Comparatively,
hypothetically, yeah, there you
Yale is $77,750, and Harvard is a bargain at $74,528.
Okay, so Bennington is more expensive than Harvard and just slightly cheaper than Yale?
Yes.
Good Lord, this
I
is
know.
a liberal arts college. I'm pretty sure the girl that I know went there, she mastered in like fairies or something.
Well, in the 2019-2020 school year, 92% of the students receive some form of financial aid. Duh, because who can afford that? And over 4 years, that's $307,392. So Ellison is probably still paying off his student loans.
I mean, that's like our house. That's literally a house in this neighborhood.
It's more than our house.
Yeah, well, it is more than our house. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Everything's fine. All right. What's your next one?
Wow. So my second little bit here is that the film was financed through the sale of foreign rights first before it was sold domestically. So what that means is none of the major studios were interested in investing in this and distributing it. They didn't want anything to do with it, despite the fact that the director had just come off The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was a pretty well-received and somewhat commercially successful horror movie. They were interested in his follow-up, but ultimately, the quote from him is, they were matter-of-fact about that. They felt the script was something that wouldn't be commercial because it involved children, end quote. And that's something Brianna and I kind of talked about during the movie, you know, how it's just kind of taboo. You know, and his view on it was that they were killing families, not children, which is a fair way to put it. And I would say you don't see any children graphically dying on screen during the film. I understand the reluctance, though, and I mean, I guess ultimately I'm glad that they proved him wrong. They obviously found some success with this film, considering there was a sequel too. But my last bit about that would be, you know, what about the children? You know, do you ever wonder about like the kids in these horror movies that have to like do these crazy things or say these scary things? Did it have any impact on these kids? Nope. The writer actually overheard the kids talking on the first day of set. They were comparing notes on how their kids killed their parents and what kind of ghosts they were and stuff like that. And they all became friends and cried together on the last day of filming because they were leaving like it was summer camp or something.
That's
so
cute.
It's adorable. These kids, they are in some really good scenes. They play a host of roles and not traumatized at all. Good to know.
That's good, because I do sometimes wonder, how is this child after being in this scary film? Although obviously it's so different from the other side. Like when you see things being filmed, you're like, this looks so fake. How do actors even act? But it is scary. But I always wonder that too. The whole, like, well, I wonder why we draw a line at kids when it comes to movies. And we talked about this while we were watching at like a specific part, something happens. You know, they don't show specifically the child being killed, but I'm always just like, I guess I'm glad they don't. I don't need to see it. I don't need to see any of it. But why do we draw as a society that distinction? Like, why can't we see that? What is the difference? When we see this happening in real life, like, I don't know, people bring guns into schools and kill children, and that happens in real life. But it's just like this American hypocrisy that we have. It's the whole idea too, where it's like seeing sex in Hollywood is okay, but we're very puritanical about sex in actual life. And it's just, we're just a country of contradictions.
Yeah, it is interesting because, you know, I've seen some really gruesome stuff happen to non-consenting adults. You know, we've seen animals just get tossed to the shredder, metaphorically.
I mean, I don't see that.
No, but I mean, as a society, you're right. That is where we draw the line. And maybe we don't know why because we're not parents. Maybe, maybe it's a parental thing.
No, I mean, obviously I understand that, like, it's horrifying, but it's just strange that even in the imagination, we've drawn this line where, like, no matter what, no matter how horrible this film is, you won't see that. Which I find mostly comforting because I know, like, when something is coming, I'm like, it's fine. I'm not going to see whatever's about to happen as someone who's afraid of everything they're seeing. But I don't know. It's just, someone should write a thesis on it or something.
Definitely food for thought.
All right. So is that all of your flesh wounds?
That is all I got.
So let's talk about our touch points for the film. I don't have anything specific for it because this came out in 2012 where I was fully an adult. And at this point have fully accepted that I am not going to watch scary movies. So I turned the channel at the commercials for them and everything. So I don't have any specific memories of this movie except for the face of the demon, Bagul. And it took me a while to realize and put it together. And it took a certain image or the way it was shown for me to remember, oh, holy crap, that's that face from the trailers that I absolutely hated. I get this movie and Hereditary mixed up in my brain. They're the same film. And I think it's simply because they're one-word titles. And I think that Ethan Hawke is in both of them as well, but he's not. He's not in Hereditary, right?
No, he is not in Hereditary that I know of. Now that you say that, I feel like he might have played the dad, but I don't think he did. But Hereditary is, yeah, I mean, having seen both movies, they are nothing alike. And Hereditary is a movie that we may or may not cover on this podcast.
Are you kidding?
Am I kidding about that we may, or am I kidding that we may not?
That we may not.
Oh, yeah. So
I thought it was guaranteed.
No, so here's my thing.
It's too scary
Hereditary,
for me.
I don't know if it's too scary for you, but I always bill Hereditary as the scariest movie, or the best movie I never want to see again. I didn't see it in the theaters. I watched it in my apartment with my sister, and I actually had to like pause it about halfway through and kind of compose myself, which, may have also been partly related to like my own mental state at the time, but also just everybody that watches that movie will just tell you it's visceral, I think is the word. It's a feeling I don't really wish to relive, and I don't think I'd really put you through that. That said, real quick, some of the hands down best scary scenes I've ever seen. I think I can think of at least two that would just give you nightmares for weeks.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, we might cover it. I think, just a little spoiler alert. Sinister hasn't really traumatized Briana in the ways that any of us really imagined. So I really just think she's not going to be super scared of stuff from now on.
No, I was scared by this. And each night that I've gone to sleep, I have been afraid, but less afraid each day.
Well, you haven't let that show at all. You've been a real trooper about it.
I know. I'm a big girl.
All right, good for you. All right, well, all that rambling about Hereditary, then I'd just say it's my silver bullet if I really need to scare the pants off you one day. Maybe we'll do it as like our first anniversary or something. Yeah. I don't know. It's a special occasion movie.
So yeah, I don't have any specific memories really of Sinister. What about you?
I don't remember what movie I was seeing, but I remember the first time I saw the trailer for Sinister. I was super excited about it. It was with a friend of mine, Janessia. We were good friends for a while. She was like my horror movie buddy. We don't really speak super much anymore, so, if you're listening, hi, hope you're doing well. But we were seeing something, and we saw the trailer for Sinister, and we're both like, yes, that is awesome. And there was a specific scene later in the movie that I'll mention when it happens that looked really, really scary in the trailer and like stuck with me, but in the context of the movie actually isn't even that scary a scene. So we were super pumped for it, saw it in the theater, loved it. Yeah, loved it. And I've seen it 2 or 3 times since. It's a good, solid rewatch movie. And the sequel's pretty good too.
I was going to ask at the end if you saw the sequel, actually.
Yeah, I did see the sequel. Another one of my friends who is also a listener, it was her favorite movie, and we watched it together a few times. It's a pretty good movie. Yeah, I just watched it recently on Netflix too. Love it.
All right, so let's get into the discussion, shall we?
Let's do it. So let's start the discussion with the way we started the movie, where I asked Briana if she's okay, and she refuses to say yes like 4 times, and then asks how long it is, and I say about 2 hours, and she says, oh God. So that's how we started the movie. So that's how I wanted you guys to start it. Go right ahead.
I'm surprised you didn't want to talk about the Blumhouse production thing,
Oh,
too.
that was the next note. Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about before we even hit play.
Oh.
Yeah, so then the production cards come up for Blumhouse. And, anybody that's seen a scary movie or a Blumhouse movie remembers that with the chair upside down and the little ghost girl and just all the weird little things. And that's just like, I honestly didn't even give a second thought to it. Like, because it's a title card, right? Who cares? And Briana was terrified already.
I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if it was part of the movie or what. It was so weird. And that's because I don't see any of these. So it begins with a home movie. It's 4 people hanging from a tree with their faces covered by a burlap sack and their hands behind their back. The shot hangs there for a while. It's kind of weird and haunting. And then the tree limb, I thought it broke, but it is obviously broken by like a chainsaw.
Yeah, you can't see what or how it's actively breaking, but you see it breaking.
Yeah. The people hanging are now lifted so that they're actually being hung, and we watch them fight with their legs kicking, and eventually it freezes with the name of the movie at the bottom.
And 2 things about this. The first, Briana at first asked if this was part of the movie or another title card, which I thought was really interesting. I think if I ever make a production company for horror movies, that's definitely going to be how I start off every movie. But on a more serious note, love it. It's unsettling. It's creepy. It sets the tone
right
for the
away.
movie right off the bat.
Yeah. So a little behind the scenes info on this. We actually both read the same article. It was a article from Film School Rejects talking about the film commentary. And Cargill, one of the writers, he said the film idea was his, and this opening scene came to him in a dream.
Yeah, it was
worst dream ever.
Yeah, it was a dream he had after seeing The Ring.
Yes, which obviously makes me never want to see The Ring.
Oh,
I don't need to have any inspirational dreams.
We are going to watch The Ring, and I love it.
He said he met with the writer-director Derrickson, and over 5 white Russians pitched it, and then they met with Jason Blumhouse or Blumhouse?
I believe it's Blumhouse.
Blumhouse the following week. So that's how it kind of started. The next scene is Ethan Hawke, or Ellison. He's moving into a house with his family. This is where that nice chunky sweater comes in. It's beautiful. It's they seem like a happy family, of course, because they always do. What is a horror movie if we don't start with a happy family that is tormented to no end? The house doesn't look haunted, which I was kind of surprised by. It's just your average brick ranch that you would see in like any subdivision.
It looks haunted by the fashion choices of the 1970s.
Well, yeah, probably. County sheriffs are parked out front, and the badge shows us that this is set in Pennsylvania. I think we're on like the West Virginia side, just from the sheriff's accent. Fred Thompson, he's got like a strong accent. There's one car with 2 younger sheriffs, and they leave when the older one arrives. He walks up to the house and asks if the husband is around.
Just real quick correction there.
What?
They're deputies. There's only one sheriff.
Oh, right. I figured that out later, and I just never corrected my notes. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's only one sheriff, but like their cars all say sheriff, so I just, whatever. I also call him an officer throughout because I forgot it was deputy. Oh, well. But this was rude because maybe she's just moving in on her own and doesn't need a husband. But the sheriff assumes she has a husband.
No, he asks for the husband because they know who's moving in there because he's famous.
No, this is a feminist issue.
Oh, I see. So you wrote this note before you got the context of who he is and why they're there?
No.
Well, then this makes no sense.
Meanwhile, Ellison is inside talking to his daughter, Ashley. She's painting on her wall, and it's a girl holding a balloon. And I thought it was really good for her age. She's great.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And I think this is a great idea, too. If you have kids, let them paint their bedrooms.
Yeah, who cares?
Awesome.
She's not happy that they moved, and he says that they had to because otherwise he'd have to edit textbooks for a job. I mean, you have a family. You can't just be dragging them around. This is a common theme that annoyed me through the entire film.
Yes, and it's a common theme that I will be more than glad to debate with you throughout this entire discussion.
Good. Great. He says that the story he's writing about is here as well. And yeah, this is where I just was like, you can't, like, what is this thing where writers have to uproot their lives just to work? You don't actually have to do that. You can write from anywhere. Here's how he could have done it. He could have kept his family in the beautiful mansion where they lived and come to this town for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks max, gotten all the information, worked his butt off getting all the information, and then go back home and write the book.
And so you're an award-winning true crime author.
No, but
Oh.
I don't think this is how all true crime writers do it. They don't upheave their family every time they need to go write a story.
Well, no, not everyone, but this one does.
Yeah, and look what happened. The conversation ends with him promising if the book doesn't sell, they'll move back, and she really perks up to hear that.
Yeah, but he says you have to give it Nana a shot to try and like it, and she agrees.
Ellison goes outside, and the sheriff says, what can I do to convince you to pack up and leave? So he knows who Ellison is and why he's there. He's familiar and offended by his work because it doesn't always put law enforcement in a good light.
Yeah, and, you know, ethical issues aside, I love this guy. The sheriff, like, you only see him in this scene and a little bit later towards the end of the movie 2 times, and he is just a treat both times. He says exactly what's on his mind.
Yeah.
He's just straightforward about it. No passive-aggressive crap. Love him. Straight shooter, this guy.
Yeah, he's basically like, don't expect any assistance from the department. And specifically, Ellison is here to write about a missing girl from the town. The sheriff says that she's dead, but Ellison thinks there's potential evidence pointing to her actually missing.
And also in this conversation, the sheriff talks about how because of Ellison's last book or last 2 books, somebody went free. So it's kind of implied that he set forth some sort of theory about a true crime in his book that let somebody get away and commit some more murders before they were caught. And so that's a bigger reason, I think, why the sheriff doesn't like him.
The media craze and all of that stuff. Then they end the conversation with the sheriff saying, I find this in extremely bad taste, and like points at the house. So I immediately was like, why did he just point to the house?
Yeah, the direct quote of Briana is, oh my God, it's the house, isn't it? You fucking dickwad.
Yeah. As soon as, I think I realized that right away. I was like, wow, honestly, you're the worst. Like, Ellison, you're the worst. He returns to helping his wife, and she asks why the cop pointed to the house. And he says, and she says, oh, we didn't move 2 doors down from the crime scene again, did we? So they've been close before. And because of the way that she asked the question, he just said no. He's not lying.
He said, I promise we're not a couple houses down from the crime scene.
Yeah.
Technically correct is the best kind of correct.
And the camera pans over to the tree, which is the same tree from the hanging that we just saw at the beginning. Because he moved into a murder house. Unforgivable. Next, Ellison goes into the attic to drop off a single box. It is obviously so dark, and that is the theme of this movie. Turn on a friggin' light.
Yeah, I was like constantly wondering if there was something wrong with like the lighting on our TV because like some scenes were just so needlessly dark.
There wasn't, because the 2 reviews that I read both mention it. And I was validated.
Oh, no, I know it was a choice. It was just, it was a choice.
And it was definitely a choice, because I was thinking, is this just what my life is going to be every week, watching horror movies that are so freaking dark, and I'm just going to be saying, turn on a freaking light, which I probably will very often because they never do turn on a light. But this movie was exceptionally dark to the point where critics even commented on it. But also, why are you already going to the attic? Like, first of all, you're not even permanently living here. Why are you moving things that you don't actually need access to on a regular basis? And also, when you decide to move, do like a house clearing where you're like, I don't use this stuff because this has been living in the attic, so I can get rid of this. He didn't even need to go into the attic, people. But he finds a scorpion crawling in the attic, which is absolutely a normal creature for rural Pennsylvania, I'm sure.
I don't think it is.
No, I know.
Okay. Yeah, through this entire scene, Briana is just gasping and making disgusted noises. And then at the end of the scene, she apologized for being obnoxious because that was the first time she'd ever been obnoxious.
How rude, first of all. Second of all, I actually said at some point, I was like, I can never go to a theater to see a horror movie because I need to speak things out to calm myself down the entire time. Like, I just need to be verbally reacting to everything.
Yeah, you were very vocal in this one.
Yeah.
So is that, is it the more vocal you are, the more scary it is?
It's somehow a coping mechanism, so I think so.
Good to know.
So to get rid of the scorpion, he drops the box on it, and it's squished, nasty. But he also finds a black box, and inside it are some old reels and a projector, I guess. And he picks out a couple that say like barbecue 79 and family hanging out 11 for like the years. And he takes the box. Next, it's dinner. Once again, it is too dark. They're eating at the table over like a single light, the world's dimmest light.
Yeah, it's like World War II during the blitzes.
Yeah.
Where they like turned off their lights.
Like we have like 7 lights on now. We have one in the room we're in. We have one in a room we're not in. We have the kitchen light on down. Like there's like 7 lights on in this house.
Yeah, they need
and
to be
that's
on.
just the norm.
They need to be on for the cat, even though he can see in the dark.
Correct. Over dinner, they talk about the move and Ellison's work. The son, Trevor, who's maybe like 12, is interested in what his dad investigates, like a normal, curious child. And apparently in the past, he has found materials of previous cases, like maybe pictures. So the mother, Tracy, is super concerned about him finding more stuff. So for the kids, the number one rule is don't go in dad's office. And for dad, the number one rule is lock your office door.
Yeah, and I think from this scene, the takeaway for me was kind of like, if you take the whole, living in the murder house and not telling her about it thing and put it aside, it seems like they have a really good relationship. It seems like they communicate really well.
Yeah.
It seems like they really support each other and trust each other, which kind of just makes that decision to not tell her all the much worse.
Totally. It's later that night and Tracy is in bed. She asks, how long are we going to be here? Which should have been something determined already. And their conversation isn't heated because she is in his corner, but she admits that it's difficult. I've kind of already said this, but I think this whole thing is just incredibly selfish. What is your defense of this?
Well, my defense of this is that he's done it several times before, and it is their living. It is what supports them. This is it's implied that Kentucky Blood, right?
Yeah,
is that what it was called?
one.
Was very successful, and the 2 or 3 between that and his current project weren't successful, but again, successful enough to support them. I'm not defending him not telling her this. I'm just defending the lifestyle. It's not ideal, no, but if it's what they've done prior to this, it doesn't make this any more egregious or less egregious. It's what they do.
I think it is difficult for the children to be uprooted and have to move repeatedly is awful for kids. So
maybe, but I mean, I'm sure they talk about that with their fictional family therapist.
Well, they won't get to for this one. Spoiler. I also wonder too if he really believes that this girl is potentially alive or not. I wonder if he looks at this as more of just like an opportunistic moment. Maybe he's hopeful that the cops made some errors along the way so that he can recreate the success of Kentucky Blood.
I feel like you're just like, you hate him in this movie.
I think so. The washed up aspect of it, I don't agree necessarily that he's washed up, but I think and maybe jaded isn't the right word either, but I think he's desperate. That's what it is. I think he's desperate.
Yeah, but I also think you're looking at this from the lens of, an impartial observer. If it's me, if, I wrote a successful hit song 10 years ago and today we're still kind of chasing that music dream, aren't you going to support me? Or are you going to say, hey, you're washed up, stop moving?
I think to an extent I would still support you. I don't know
better.
if we had children, if I was like, yeah, let's uproot our lives every year so that you can go write a song.
Fair enough. I feel like this episode is very very combative.
People like our banter. It's fine.
They do, but this isn't banter. This is like people are listening to this and they're wondering if we're having a real fight, and this is like our proxy, So we'll just. I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree on the health of their relationship for the rest of the podcast.
All right. Well, back to their conversation. She gives him the world's most polite ultimatum, I think. She basically says that, if it doesn't work out, she'll take the kids and go to her sister's. And she's like, is that fair?
And that's my thing, too, is I think it's totally fair. I think,
yeah.
There is a world where she just says, hey, I'm going to support you and you can do this and you can be here, but we're going to be over here. And then they, move back in together after he writes the book. That's totally realistic and fair of her, but it's also unfair of her to ask him to stop.
Right. But he agrees. And I think it's mostly because he's so sure that this is going to work and everything's going to be a success it'll be fine.
He found these tapes and he isn't sure what's on them, but this is the house. So he's like, yeah, I got this.
He's like, this is worth it. She asks if he's going to come to bed and he says, no, I'm going to set up my office. So in his office, he has this big cork board and he starts putting up photos related to the case. he has a photo of the attic. It's empty, so I guess maybe this was from the listing or something.
Yeah, he mentions that later, and like when he's either talking to the deputy or Vincent D'Onofrio,
okay.
but he's like, yeah, like so it's implied he didn't see the house in person before they bought it. He saw photos, and he was saying that it wasn't in the photos of the empty house.
Okay, got it. And then on that picture, he put a Post-it and drew the black box, and then another Post-it that said, "Box of films, how did it get here?" Solid question. I'm leaving. I'm leaving already. Once I find the black box and I know it wasn't there before, bye. Just so you know, we're out.
Okay, good to know. So if like we ever move into a place I don't like, can I like sneak a box of ghost movies in the attic before we move in?
Please don't. But why would we ever move somewhere you don't like? Now we're fighting for real.
Well, I don't know, because you're a successful writer and I support your dreams, Brianna.
Would love to be a successful writer.
Mm-hmm.
He decides to play one of the reels in the projector. This is the family hanging out from 2011.
Love it.
And I didn't really think too much about the names until after as I was rewriting my notes. I was like, oh, they're literally hanging out. That's terrible and great.
Oh, you didn't get those names till after?
No.
Oh,
Because of how they start off. They start off as that. So it's literally kids playing at the tree. There's a tire swing and they're like playing in the tire swing. It's a mother and daughter maybe like gardening. So it's a family hanging out. And then like the music is so unsettling, by the way, throughout every time he's watching these movies.
They do a great job with the score.
I appreciate it so much as I hate it. The film suddenly cuts and we see what we saw at the very beginning. So 4 people hanging from a tree being hung. And I just wrote in my notes, hanging out. Like, yeah, I get it now.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is a very serious movie in scary parts. And then there's a lot of comedic relief in this movie in the form of Deputy So-and-so, who I love.
Yes.
And I would say that this is also just a little like fun little like wink to the horror movie fans out there. You know, it's just they're funny, macabre jokes. That's it.
So that was a lot for Ellison to see. He pours a drink and chugs it. He watches it again, and this time he takes notes, which is what you're supposed to do, you know, rewatch, but I will never, as we've discussed.
And his note, it just made me like pause and think, like, do all dads write in all caps?
Oh my God, my dad does.
Yeah, my dad did too. Is it like a thing that like, is there like a parenting class?
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's like, I swear there's like a parenting class where they teach men to write in all caps after they've given birth or after their wives have given birth because...
It's very neat penmanship. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, one of those notes is who made the film? Another great question. Once again, time to go. I'm leaving. I cannot express it enough. He also writes, where is Stephanie, who is the missing girl? So he's basically just watched the murder of that family who lived there take place and obviously notices, I guess, that the girl is missing from this video. So he goes outside and he looks at the tree. At first, I did have many questions with this because I didn't realize that Stephanie was the subject. And, you know, and it's because horror just continues to drop you into a story without giving you any information. Like, they don't even say the wife's name pretty much ever, I feel like, throughout this film. So I was just going to call her Mom. And then I was like, no, I'll call her Tracy. But he goes back inside, still not one freaking light. He's walking around in the kitchen and he hears a creak. And as he inspects, he looks out the window and something walks behind him. Gasp. Yes, I probably did. It is his daughter, though. She's in the laundry room. She's barely awake, and she's looking for the bathroom.
The thing about this kid, though, is she looks like a 35-year-old little person who's been smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for the last 20 years. She's got just such a weathered face.
Aw.
I know. I'm not trying to be mean. she looked creepy.
It's because her dad makes her move around a lot. She's sad.
I thought we agreed to disagree.
I mean, obviously he takes her to the bathroom, but we just see him put her back to bed and he compliments her paintings on the wall, saying that she's getting really good. And she says, Daddy, are you going to write a really good book this time so we can go home? I'll just leave that there. He goes back to his office and watches another reel. It's a family fishing and maybe like camping. It's very 70s, clearly from the styles and the van.
Yeah, this one is titled Barbecue 79.
Yeah. The film switches again, and it's dark and panning around the station wagon until we see the same people from earlier that were just, you know, at their barbecue tied up in the station wagon, and then it gets set on fire. Barbecue.
Yeah. You get a little glimpse of something like a quick symbol on the hood of the car.
Yes.
And it's an unpleasant way to go.
It's the Sinister symbol.
Love it.
Ellison goes for his drink, but it's empty. And now he calls the operator to get to the King County Police. Someone comes through asking how to direct their call. He ignores the question and hangs up. So he kind of like, as he's walking around waiting for them to connect him, he looks at the books of Kentucky Blood. And I think he just realizes like, no, if I just give up this information now with a department that I know isn't going to cooperate with me, like I lose everything. So he just hangs up and moves on. He watches Pool Party 66, but while he tries to, as the projector is counting down, he hears a thump and a creak, and he assumes it's Ashley, his daughter, again, and he goes in and checks on her, but she's sleeping. So there's more noises that seem to come from the attic, but also down the hall and maybe also behind him. And he goes down the hall and turns around at the sound. At the other end of the hall is another room with a box, like one of the moving boxes. The box suddenly opens and Trevor comes out of it in that like creepy backbend position. His eyes and mouth are open wide and he is just screaming.
At the top of his lungs, just screaming.
A terrifying scream.
Yeah.
Like so unsettling.
And so this is the scene from the trailer that
I figured.
That I had seen that I was really excited about, because the trailer is just kind of a slow zoom on the box and Trevor just starting to come out of it. So you see just kind of the form of a person, and it's very creepy. And it kind of makes you think, like something otherworldly or possession or something like that. But turns out he's just having a night terror.
Yeah, Tracy wakes up and they run outside carrying him, telling him to look at the stars. And finally he stops and he I guess wakes up enough to say, "Why am I outside?" And he pretty much immediately goes right back to sleep. They put him back to bed, but there's concern because he hasn't had this issue in a while. Also, this is another moment of inspiration from real life because Derrickson's son also experiences night terrors, and he apparently screams just like this. He says he'll look right at you and scream holy terror. Nope, no thank you. The next morning, the mom makes breakfast while the kids argue at the table. And one note I had for this was that the way they were arguing was nothing bad, very typical of a family, but it was just a very stark difference from Poltergeist, where the kids were arguing, but they were being really playful with each other, and the mom was kind of being playful, but instead these two kids were just like being really mean, and the mom was just yelling at them, and it was just really chaotic.
That's really interesting because I actually, I had a note comparing it to another movie. I said that Trevor's hair looked like Val from Brink.
Oh my God. Brink. I think it looks better. It's beautiful hair.
I don't think anything
gorgeous locks.
Could look better than Val from Brink. That was like the ideal when I was 13. So,
well, the kids go to school and mom says she's going to run errands, leaving Ellison alone. He goes to his office and now does watch Pool Party 66. It's a pool party. So fun. Until it cuts to all of the people tied to lounge chairs being pulled one by one into the pool by a rope.
And I'll say this is my least favorite / most favorite. Like this is the one that makes me the most uncomfortable to watch. One, because drowning is always like I've had nightmares about drowning. Like that's something that I'm primally afraid of. And two, because when the first person gets pulled in, I don't know if you saw this, but there's kind of a pause before the second person gets pulled in. Throughout these tapes, the people have been sedated or shown to be sedated. Like when you see the people in the backseat of the car, they look drugged. So when the first one goes in, you see the feet like wiggling above the water as they wake up and start to drown. And that specific thing stays in my memory. So that's a rough one for me.
Don't like that. Also, in the pool as they drown, we see a scary figure. And I fucking hate it.
But cool.
Don't say it. That's bad. That sounds like we shouldn't say it. But they call him Mr. Boogie. Ellison walks up as close as possible to the screen, I guess to try to maybe like make out what it is, but I hated it because I definitely assumed the figure would move. It did not yet. But the projector sets on fire. Later, the family comes home and Tracy is yelling at Trevor because he drew on a whiteboard at school in a permanent marker. and it was a drawing of the people hanging from the tree. Tracy freaks out at Ellison that Trevor knows about it, but I mean, I get it because you don't want your kids drawing things like that. But she's very overprotective about them finding out about this. And they live in a probably small town where something absolutely horrible happened. And he's at that age where he's going to know about it. Like, the internet exists.
Yeah, I think their conversation earlier, too, was like, he's going to find out.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was Tobias.
No, he's right here. I could not be more terrified. Okay. Oh, I just heard it get dropped. You guys, as we're talking about this, we just heard a thump, and I could not have been more terrified. It was just Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so before they were just saying that it was kind of inevitable that he found out. Tracy said that, like, the kids at school told him at the last place.
Right. Yeah, so I understand, like, wanting to protect your children from these horrors, but you can't. Like, she's got to calm down. But so Ellison watches another video. By the way, he is spending no time with his family. Just, so what's the point? Anyway.
Well, hold on, though. When he's doing this, it's nighttime. They're all asleep.
Okay, so they just didn't film the parts where he's with his family all day.
Yeah, because nobody, why do you want to watch that?
You're right. Yeah, I don't ever want to see happy family times in these horrible movies. This video has no happy beginning, though, unlike the rest. It's dark and only lit by the camera. We've got that restricted view going, which I definitely hate. There's a small dog. Don't worry, he's okay, because I was worried. Then we see people duct taped, and someone slits each of their throats. The throat slitting is seen by us as viewers through Ethan's glasses, which, I mean, was just a super cool shot, like a very unique way.
Stylistically, it was super cool.
Yeah. And this was where we had the whole discussion about the children being killed, because there's the last person killed is a child. And the way that we actually see it is we're looking at Ellison's face, and what the screen that he's looking at is all blurry. So we can't really see what's happening because the camera's focused on Ellison, who has turned his head away. And I think he takes a drink because he can't handle looking at it. He watches it again, but this time he watches it on his computer so that he can move through it at his own pace and, like, zoom in on it and try to inspect things more closely. And he sees the same symbol that was on the station wagon in the barbecue one. He sees that on the wall. He also spots a book that says Science Center of St. Louis or something like that. So he does some Googling because now he knows the location of this murder, and he finds a news report that confirms those details. He pulls out another reel named Sleepy Time. I did not want to watch this one. I was like, we don't need to see that one. You can skip this, whatever. But he's interrupted by another creak. It stops, so he continues until the lights go out. The minimal lights that existed. There are more sounds, louder, and kind of like a machine sounding. I don't know if that was the music or if it was something he was actually hearing.
Oh, that was the reel. That's the sound of the reel spinning.
Oh, I hated it. It was scary. He uses his cell phone as his flashlight, which is just not enough light. And he hears a really loud thump, which I think occurred just as I asked if this movie has any jump scares.
Yeah, so your exact words were, do we ever see is there a jump? Does the bad guy jump? Do we ever see the bad guy jump? Word for word, written as you spoke it.
Coming from a very sane person who is clearly not afraid at all. Ellison ventures into the attic. By the way, he's holding a knife as though he has no idea how to hold a knife. He enters the attic, knife first. Whatever. The door to the attic slams shut on its own, and he screams, which I appreciated that reaction because that is accurate.
Realistic.
He finds another black box, and it's moving slightly. There's a rack of, like, fireplace tools, and he grabs one, like one of the pickers, I guess, and he kind of picks off the top of the box. Did the snake come out of the box? Or under the box, or
no? So that was like the lid of the box,
yeah,
and it was just on the floor, and the snake was trying to crawl on the floor, and that's what was moving the box.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
Just one quick note about this: Briana sighed in huge relief when it was just a snake? ? Like, I'm sure you were expecting, a ghost baby or something.
Yes.
But, like, I understand. But that's still scary.
Yes, I know. But there's levels of fear. There's 10, whatever you just said. And then there's 3, a snake.
Well, that's interesting to me, though, because I feel like it is more likely to have a snake in your attic than a ghost child.
Well, I guess not this attic. I mean,
enough.
not this snake, because it was definitely like black with red, and that's not a normal snake. But it slithers away, so nothing happens with the snake. It's just a symbol of the demon. So there's that, and then the scorpion was also a symbol of it.
Yeah, and so actually then there's a third symbol later in the movie, and then at the end of the movie, they kind of have it up along the wall where you see the symbols, and I never noticed that before. I have that in like my notes at the end of the movie when they actually show the symbols. I never really put that together as a symbol of the demon. I was just like, oh, I guess they have fucking snakes and scorpions. Guess they have a real pest problem. Yeah, I don't know. Like, that wasn't my active thought process. I just never read into it at all. I just always thought it was like a fake out scare by like the producer or something,
See, I guess I knew immediately because a scorpion doesn't belong in Pennsylvania. So I was like, oh, this is demon shit.
Yeah, I didn't know it was Pennsylvania, to be honest with you. I didn't look at the any of the location stuff. Never really stuck with me, I guess.
Well, he's looking at the top of the box, and there are drawings representing the bad parts of each video. They look like they're drawn by a child, and each drawing includes a figure labeled Mr. Boogie, and it's almost like a diagram. So, like, if you take the one with the people in the pool, you can see all of the bodies in the pool, and then also in the pool is someone labeled Mr. Boogie, who we did see in the video, but he also is in the other videos, and we just haven't seen him yet. He hears more creaking, and now he walks toward where he thinks it's coming from. He's walking with purpose, almost like he's fed up with this, and then he suddenly falls through the ceiling. Next, we see that he's getting his leg patched up by EMTs because it was cut in the fall. So, fun little fact about this from the commentary. Ellison was actually supposed to cut his arm in this fall, but Ethan really loved the chunky sweater to the point where he was like, can we not rip this, please? So they spent half a day trying to make it work, like still having him hurt his arm, but not rip the freaking sweater. And they finally just were like, let's have him cut his leg.
It's really interesting to me that that's not where they went first.
I know. It makes more sense. Like the leg goes through first.
Well, no, and also just like, if you don't want to rip the sweater, hurt him somewhere else. Why does it have to be the arm?
Yeah.
But maybe there was something written in later that it came to play or something.
Right. So all because Ethan Hawke liked the sweater. They rewrote things.
It's a nice sweater.
It is. One of the younger officers or deputies from the beginning is there as he's getting his leg patched up. I guess probably because Ellison called saying there was an intruder, potentially. They have like a funny conversation because the deputy is kind of the humor in this. And he suggests that he's got a squirrel issue.
Yeah, he's just such a good guy.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, he's the only one that's in the sequel from this movie.
Oh, yeah, I saw that when I was looking things up.
And I'm glad he is.
He's an ex-deputy in the next one.
Oh, yeah, he's a badass in the next one, actually. He's pretty cool, yeah.
Well, as they wrap up that conversation, he says that he's a huge fan and would love to come back with his copy of Kentucky Blood and get it signed. But Ellison's like, oh, yeah, I have copies. I'll sign one for you now. Ellison also sees this as an opportunity to get helpful information from the department. So now he's like, oh, you don't hate me. I'm going to see what I can do with you. He asks him to like get details on the murders he's seen from the film so far, but he doesn't tell him what he knows.
Well, it wasn't Ellison's idea. It was the deputy's idea.
Oh.
That's how the name Deputy So-and-so came about. Do you not remember? He's like, you know how every book you have your acknowledgments and you say thanks to Deputy So-and-so from the local police department? Well, maybe I could be Deputy So-and-so.
Right.
And that is how he is named. See, you just hate Ellison so much that you were like, he leapt at the opportunity to take advantage of someone.
I thought it was smart. I love that he was doing that. That's exactly what he should do. I was just too anxious to really catch on to those details. Next, he's watching an interview of himself from the Kentucky Blood days. His hair is a choice.
We need to pause and talk about this because as this man appears on the screen, Briana, in what can only be described as an intense, visceral reaction, goes, "Oh my God, what a nerd. He's so ugly." Direct quote written down right here. Now, I'm going to be very quiet as she recaps the next 15 minutes of the movie because I was not paying any attention to the movie. I was wondering how many women have looked at me over the course of my life and thought that.
Oh my God.
Because when you're a guy and you look stupid, you're like, oh, nobody's looking at me thinking that. But you saying that out loud confirmed for me that is how women think.
He is on television. He's there to be looked at, of course. I mean, his hair was parted to the side and like greased down. He looked like the Penguin from Gotham.
Oh, you know what? He did look like the Penguin from Gotham.
He did.
You're right. I think I was just too hurt to put that together.
At the end of the interview, he says that, like, he gets asked, like, what's more important, the justice or fame? Which is just such a stupid question because who's going to say the fame? So, of course, he says justice. But I don't know. Who knows? You know, whatever. I think it's both probably for him. Next, he inspects the videos comparing to the drawings on top of the box. And so he watches to like find where Mr. Boogie is in each. And he prints off photos from each movie. The next morning, Tracy and Ashley are in the kitchen together. Tracy points out that Daddy likes his coffee in a very specific way. And Ashley is kind of like watching and learning how.
And the shot of her making the coffee was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that shot. And I know you're not really going to get this, but it was very similar to the opening of Dexter, where he like makes his coffee. It's very similar. I'll show it to you. And it was uncanny. I wonder if it was like influenced by it.
Huh, maybe. Well, I wasn't really going to even mention this, but it ends up coming back later. So, because I remember watching it and wondering, what's the point of this? Why are they showing us this scene? Like, other than it looking really like a cool, sleek French press feature, it doesn't make any sense to show it, but it comes back later. Oh, and Ashley delivers the coffee to him. Officer so-and-so, or Deputy so-and-so, as he is officially saved in Ellison's phone, calls with information on the family barbecue and the Poole family. They're connected in that the Van family was killed. Maybe they were the first ones. Then the Poole family moved into that house and they were killed when they moved out. While Ellison is looking at files that show address details, we can see his computer screen, and one of the pictures is a close-up of Mr. Boogie, and it freaking moves. And even though I like knew this would happen eventually because I just could feel it, it scared the shit out of me. I hated it. So from the commentary, apparently the film was critiqued or criticized for its Apple ad placement. And I mean, you can very much tell that he's using an iPhone from 2012 and a Mac computer because they show him like navigating to like cropping and printing and stuff like that. So you can tell. But I really didn't feel it to be offensive in any way. Like I often can see ad placement and I really can't stand blatant ad placement, but this is a film kind of centered around technology. So either way, some form of technology was going to have to be shown. And quite frankly, they don't show the Apple symbol, I don't think, once. But it's just, you know, the UI of Apple is so distinct that you just happen to know that it's Apple. But according to Derrickson, they went with Apple because contractually it was easier. He says, Apple's thing is, yeah, you want to use our products in your work, go ahead. There weren't any requests or limitations, so they're able to show what they did here, which is kind of like Mr. Boogie infiltrating the software.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting because I don't know if you've heard this as well, but Apple kind of now has a rep of they don't want bad guys using their products in films.
Yeah.
And so this obviously, you know, this was like 2012. This probably was made in 2011. You know, so that's what, iPhone 3, iPhone, you know.
It's still the early days.
We're still very early, so they probably don't quite have that rule in place yet.
Yeah, they probably just like use our products, get people to see them. I mean, like the Ring, not the Ring the movie, but the ring of the iPhone is such a familiar ring. I Love You Man is the reason why I wanted an iPhone, because he uses that iPhone. And again, you don't see that it's an iPhone, but you hear that ring, and it's just that thing that like, I don't know, I wanted it. So it works. Science. Then a recording of himself appears on the computer and it starts playing. It's from when he fell through the ceiling. But on the video, we see like small ghost hands grabbing at him and he slams the laptop shut. So obviously he did not record himself falling through the ceiling. So we now have like a mysterious recording being added. That night he's sleeping and he's awoken by the sound of the projector running. He calls out to the kids, but it's not them. He goes into his office. And the hanging video is playing on the computer and the projector. He stops the projector, but zooms in on Mr. Boogie in the bushes. And he takes the printed photo off the board and goes to the window, which matches the view that he sees in the picture. He puts the photo up to the window and then puts it down. And there's Mr. Boogie in the same spot. And then he vanishes.
Of course.
Which I knew this was coming, but I still hated it. It was still scary. He grabs a bat and a flashlight, I think, or is he using his phone still? I couldn't tell.
I believe it's still his phone.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no. He's got one of those big can flashlights.
Yeah, okay.
With like D batteries in it.
And he goes outside to the spot where he saw Mr. Boogie. No one is there, but something rustles, and we see like wide eyes peeking out. It's Trevor again. He had another night terror. And so he brings him in and leaves him with Tracy, who's now awake. And then he goes back outside to retrieve the light and bat that he left outside. When he does that, he's met with a black dog who is snarling and growling at him. And as he's like talking to the dog, like, hey, just let me grab my bat so that I can hit you with it, is what he says. There are 5 figures behind him. And the dog just like walks away. He never sees the figures, so he just gets his stuff and goes. Tracy and Ellison argue because she's nervous and scared that Trevor he's never experienced it this bad, I guess. He's never left his room, and actually left the house. And Ellison says that we have to lock his room. She insists that they should leave, but he kind of just disregards her. The next day, Deputy so-and-so comes back with more details and adds, I'm smarter than you think I am. You got to loop me in. I know connected murders when I see them. So Ellison shares details with the cop, or with the deputy, and he's afraid about the symbol. He thinks it's like a cult. So he tells Ellison to contact a professor at a local college who has occult knowledge.
Played by the wonderful Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yes, we'll see him later. That night, he watches another film. Once again, there's no happy beginning to this one. It's called Lawn Work, but it's nighttime. And it's someone filming a family like inside the house. So the person is outside the house and they're filming the family inside. Next, the camera person goes into the shed and like gets a lawnmower. We don't see it, but the family is mowed over. That's what happens.
Yeah, they don't really show anything, but in terms of just the idea of it, this is probably the most brutal one, I'd say.
Yeah, Jesus. The projector suddenly makes a loud noise, which makes Ellison jump and leave the room, and he returns and turns the projector off. The professor calls, which is Vincent D'Onofrio. Derrickson said about him that his lines weren't well memorized, which was frustrating for me, but he's an actor who needed to not have his lines memorized because it was clear that sense of aliveness and realism in his delivery is classic Vincent D'Onofrio.
He's right. It is classic Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, and apparently there's no bad blood there because Cargill says of him on the commentary, delicious, delightful D'Onofrio, which should be the title of his like autobiography.
We should get like a sign that says that, like live, laugh, love. But instead that, like right in our kitchen.
Love that. And just explain it to no one. Like, yeah, that's just our sign. The professor shares that the symbol is obscure and is associated with worship of a pagan deity named Bagul, also known as the Eater of Children. It needs souls of children to survive. And he adds that anytime this symbol has shown up, it's never actually been associated with worship of that deity. So I Googled it to see if this deity was real. And it's not. It's totally made up. But from an article on Tubi, which I don't even quite know what that is, but it's written by Amber Humphrey. Apparently, it shares traits with ancient deities, specifically Moloch.
Moloch.
That's what I said. Moloch?
Moloch.
Moloch. Okay.
There you go.
The emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Exactly.
Moloch.
And Baal, right?
And Baal, yes.
Yeah.
So Moloch is the Canaanite deity of child sacrifice.
Yeah, he shows up in the book of Genesis. He's a pretty good dude.
Yes. Well, is that what the Leviticus is? The book of Genesis?
Oh, Leviticus. No. That's another Old Testament book.
In the Hebrew Bible, Moses warns the Jewish people about worshiping Moloch. Leviticus 18:21 says, "You shall not give any of your children to devote them by fire to Moloch, and so profane the name of your God." According to the official Facebook page of the movie, Bagul is called brother of Moloch, and he, quote, mimicked Moloch's worship and child sacrifice rituals before Moloch furiously shut Bagul's mouth with ash for eternity.
Which, like, one, I guess that explains why he has no mouth.
Yes.
But two, like, that's so ballsy. Imagine creating a character and writing it into the Bible. That's insane. It's just, what kind of confidence do you have to be like, I'm going to put my character in the Bible?
And like you said, it's also similar to another Canaanite deity, Baal, which American Horror Story just covered in their like other stories show that we watched that episode. That was a good episode. Ellison packs up the projector and very purposely locks his office, then goes to bed. Later that night, though, once again, it starts up on its own. At this point, I am for sure leaving the house. Like, I am packing my bags right now. I'm not even no. We don't even have to go into the office to look at the video again. We are packing, we are leaving, we are goodbye.
You would have left long before this.
I know.
You wouldn't even be in this situation. But I will say, this is the start of, like, the best sequence of the movie, I would say. Would you agree with that in terms of scariness?
In terms of scariness, yes. The best sequence, I think, is the end.
The ending is great. But yeah, in terms of scariness, this one tops it for me.
Yeah. He grabs his bat, he hears clattering, and when he's in the kitchen, a ghost child's face appears next to him, but he doesn't see it.
This made Briana scream the loudest F word I have ever heard her scream. As this little girl's face appeared right beside him, I was basically cuddling her because I was already comforting her. And I think I actually had some hearing loss from this.
It was because it's so freaking dark with him walking around. The face came out of nowhere. It was awful.
Yeah, and these are the children we were talking about earlier in the flesh wounds.
Yes. Okay, so right when this happened, I think I physically reacted to, like, I kind of went back a little bit. And it reminded me of my jump scare trauma. And I think this is why I hate jump scares so much. Like, I don't find them to be fun, which is an issue. But I think, every millennial has like a jump scare trauma. We all have experienced this. Recall the early days of AIM. You're like a middle schooler or maybe early high school. And, you hear the creak of the door open and it's your crush. And you're like, oh, wow, this is great. He's here. And he IMs you. It just got better. Holy crap. But he IMs you a link. And that link says, turn your volume all the way up. So I'm just going to watch this link because I am innocent. The internet is new. The world is great. It is a cartoon of some like stick figures, basically just like walking down the street. There's maybe music. I don't even think there's music. I can't remember. But it's so quiet. So you have to turn your volume. Are you putting it up? Okay. So you have to turn the volume up all the way. And then a horrible, scary face just comes up out of nowhere screaming so loudly because you are stupid with your volume all the way up. I physically reacted watching this so our computer was in the basement. The floor was concrete. We had a rolly chair, so it was very easy to just roll back. I pushed back, like all fours, pushed back from the desk. My neck whipped back. I think I gave myself whiplash. Like my head and neck hurt for the rest of the day. Thanks, Adam. That's your fault. I wasn't going to say his name, but he doesn't listen. It's fine.
And if you do listen, we hate you.
Traumatized for life. I'm sorry if listening to that scared any of you because I know it's tough to remember. Okay, so the ghost kind of moves around the house in slow motion. Another one, a boy appears. And by the way, they look really gross. Their skin is like all cracked and bubbly and bumpy and blah. A third appears behind him at the end of the hall, and like Ellison turns around and that ghost goes away. And when he turns back, another one appears and kind of seems to be like chasing him, which made me a little nervous. And at the last second, like as Ellison starts to turn around, that ghost kind of bounces off into a room. The projector is on again. He checks on the kids. Ashley appears to be sleeping. And once he leaves, the camera shows her face, which was facing away from the door. She's wide awake, looking at the first ghost who appeared. So the one that scared me, which is a girl. And she says, like, shush. Like, she doesn't really say it, but she does the symbol for it.
She puts her finger to her lips,
On the wall is a drawing of the hanging tree and Mr. Boogie, which seeing that is what made me remember, oh yeah, the trailers, I hate this. Ellison checks the doors to make sure everything's all locked up, and he ends up falling asleep, sitting up on the couch with the bat in his lap until sunrise. Next, Deputy So-and-so comes over again. Ellison kind of broaches the topic of the paranormal, though he's hesitant because he very obviously doesn't actually believe in this.
This conversation, okay, maybe I'm getting too specific, maybe I'm getting weird here, but the tone that Ellison takes in this conversation is like he's trying to convince Deputy So-and-so that they can have sex and still not be gay. That's the way he's speaking. He's like,
yeah.
He's like, if I were to say that we just like kissed a little, that doesn't make us gay, right? Right? I don't believe in ghosts, but like if I did believe in ghosts.
Exactly. So he asks like if the previous owners have ever reported anything, and Deputy So-and-so is like, no. And he asks if Tracy knows what house they moved into. And Ellison says no, but that he doesn't, believe in any of this stuff. And Officer or Deputy So-and-so says, of course you don't. You wouldn't have moved into a crime scene if you did, which, brilliant.
Yeah, through this entire scene, like, Deputy So-and-so is just, like, such a good guy. Like, he really is, like, Ethan Hawke is telling him, like, my house is haunted. Like, he's like, I've been kept up by demon children all night. And he's just like, hey, man, like, look, like, I don't think you're crazy, but, like, maybe you drink less and get a little more sleep, And he's just such a good guy.
He's like, you're under stress. Your mind is trying to process everything at once. And you're drinking a lot, but you're not an alcoholic. Don't worry. Later, Ellison is writing in his office, and Tracy calls for him. Ashley is in trouble for painting on the walls outside of her bedroom. So she's allowed to paint the walls in her bedroom, but she has painted in the hallway. She drew a picture of the tree, with the tire swing, though, which doesn't currently exist. So how did she know about it? And she also drew a girl. She explains that the girl is Stephanie, her friend who used to live here, and that she wanted the picture, but not in Ashley's room because that was her brother's room.
Burn the house. Burn it
all down. The secret is out, and Tracy rages at Ellison, appropriately so.
Well, it's funny. No, I was just going to say, they do have this argument, and my only note during this argument is they are both so wrong that I can't take it. Like, listening to them argue in circles was very frustrating, and they're both just terrible in this scene.
I thought she made some valid points. He says that writing is my legacy, and she's like, nah, that's your family, but, whatever. He's like, I just can't write and edit textbooks for my life.
Right. And I mean, he's an artist, and he is supporting his family with his art.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily fair of someone to live off that for so long, and now suddenly, immediately, it's a problem. If, again, they've moved several times. They've done this several times. And in the middle of this, it's a problem. But I don't think it's, again, like I said earlier, she can leave. They don't have to go with him. He can still go and write these books.
They moved into the murder house, though. Like, that was it for her. That was wrong. You can admit that.
Well, yeah, I never defended that at all.
Okay. Well, that's why she's so mad. I guess it's like, whatever, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly, yeah. There's a lot of points here that just, I think she was being kind of hypocritical about. That's all I'm saying.
That night they're sleeping, he's sleeping. Oh, I just realized he's not sleeping in their bedroom. That's why Tracy's not in there. Because they had the fight. Okay, that makes so much sense. Okay, so he's sleeping in a bed alone. And my point was like, where is Tracy? Why isn't she next to him? We're just not going to talk about this. But okay, now I understand. Figuring things out in real time. Well, a light appears on him, and it's like a camera light because it's like moving toward him, which this part scared me a lot because that's just one of my ultimate fears is like waking up and someone being there. As it moves toward him, though, it turns off, and he awakes to the projector noise, so the light doesn't even wake him. He walks down the hall, carrying the keys to his office. He turns on the light in his office. Finally, he turns on a light and finds no projector. He goes out into the hall and finds the ladder to the attic is down, magically, so he climbs it. And when he, peeks his head in, he finds the 5 kids, the ones who were just haunting him the night before, watching a video on the projector. So they're watching one of the films, and they turn to him and they do the shush sign, and Mr. Boogie is coming into the shot on the screen. So he's like coming onto the screen, and then he comes right in front of Ellison. So like in real life, he's like right in front of his face, and Ellison falls down the stairs.
This scene from like start to finish, I felt was like really trippy. Like the music that they used with it, and like the camera style, it felt like a dream. The whole thing.
I even asked,
really
I was like, is this supposed to be real or a dream sequence? Like, what is this? And I don't think I was scared specifically by that jump right there, right? Because I knew it was coming.
No, and I'm pretty sure I laughed at this one because this is the one where his head comes in like sideways from the top corner. Just like, hey, buddy.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny.
Sure, it was hilarious. Yeah. He's on the floor, and suddenly the projector and tape all fall from the ceiling as well. He gathers it and burns it. He goes outside and he just burns it. Tracy comes out and he's like, we're leaving now. And he meant now because there's a whole sequence of them packing and leaving. As they leave, he's like speeding down the road. He says he just wants to get like as much road between them and the house as he can. And because he's speeding, the sheriff from the beginning, the old guy, pulls him over. However, he's glad to hear that they're leaving. He just wants to make sure that they're not leaving because they were bullied out of town, because he doesn't want to read that in the book. And Ellison is like, there is no book. And the sheriff is so pleased to hear this that he just lets them go without a ticket.
Love this guy. He's a straight shooter.
They return to their previous house, which is a freaking mansion. It is beautiful. And it's not one of those ugly McMansions. Like, this is an old house that is stunning and classic and wonderful. Can't believe he made them leave to a murder house.
Well, they said earlier that they couldn't afford it. I think that was the big issue.
So it just hasn't sold yet? And they're just going back?
I believe so, yeah. Because, I mean, at this point, they've only been there less than a week.
I guess. Yeah, that's true. As he unpacks his office, the professor comes back or emails with images and the scorpion and the snake and like all these ancient images. And he says that the deity can take possession of those who see its images, which is essentially Ellison. Ellison goes to the attic for some reason and finds the black box, which this is like my least favorite part of horror movies, just because the idea of like you can never get away from it is my ultimate nightmare. Like, that's what scares me. That's what stays with me, is like, you can't get away from this.
You can leave the haunting, but maybe the haunting comes with you.
Exactly. He spills it out aggressively because he's just like pissed and scared. And he finds a package in it that says extended cut endings. In the commentary, Derrickson asked out loud, is that cheesy? Apparently he second guesses it all the time, but Cargill says it gets a laugh. I didn't know it was supposed to be funny. I was afraid.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. You know, it's funny in the same way that the titles of the films are funny, you know?
I guess, yeah.
It's just grim.
I say don't watch it, but he does. Deputy so-and-so calls and explains that every murder is connected. He says you can draw a line from murder to murder. So to explain this, basically it's like Family A lived in house 1 and was murdered. Family B moved into house 1, then they left house 1, and when they moved into house 2, were murdered. Family C moves into house 2, later moves into house 3, and are murdered, etc., etc. So theoretically, staying in the house and not leaving is better. Except that you're being haunted.
Well, would you rather be haunted or dead? I mean, dead, really, right? I'd rather be dead.
I guess.
I'd rather be dead than haunted. No, thank you.
I'd rather be neither. So yeah, to sum it up, once they move on, they get murdered, and Ellison has just moved his family.
Oh, no.
The extended cuts reveal who taped and committed the murders.
And before you reveal it, had this crossed your mind at any point in the movie?
I think no, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, this makes sense.
That's exactly what my takeaway was watching this, was like, it seems so obvious in hindsight, and it's like The Sixth Sense, where like, spoiler alert, Bruce Willis is dead. And if you watch it again knowing that, like, so many other scenes kind of have a different context to them. And I feel like this is the same way. I feel like if you watch this movie again, or, I mean, like you said, if you just remember what you just saw, it does seem pretty obvious.
Yeah. I remember, being confused, like where these children that are haunting him come into play. Like, it was confusing, but this is tied together very well.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of the reasons I love the movie.
So yeah, it was the children, one child from each family that was killed. Essentially, they're like the missing kids in any of these cases. They each finish their film by going up to the camera and doing the shush. And, so it's the ghost children that we saw. Ellison gets up from his seat and is moving like he's drunk. And I thought maybe he was in shock at first, but he's been drugged because he looks at a note on his desk, which I did spot earlier. And I was like, what's with this like construction paper clearly written by a child? And it says, "Good night, Daddy. She made his coffee." So that's where it comes into play
She
earlier.
always brings him his coffee, yeah.
Yeah. He wakes up and he's duct taped. He sees his wife and son are too. Ashley comes in and says, "Don't worry, Daddy, I'll make you famous again."
Best line in the movie, and I believe the director's favorite line in the movie as well.
Yeah, Derrickson said that. It cuts now to like us watching the tape. Ashley comes out of the room into the hallway dragging an axe, which was a very haunting image because she's like dragging it behind her.
Yeah, it's like a big lumber axe. It's not like a hatchet or anything.
Yeah. She does the shush to the camera and it pans down the hallway, which is covered in blood with like little drawings done in the blood. Were those the drawings that you were talking about, like the scorpion and stuff, or no?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I also just thought of it as like she loves drawing, so this makes perfect sense. We also see the Sinister symbol again. And all the kids walk up to the camera, like close to the camera, and turn their heads. And then the camera pans to Ashley at her father's desk. So not on camera. And she's drawing her story on the box so it can join the rest of them.
And in her little story, it shows stick figures for Mommy and Daddy and Trevor, and they're chopped into thirds.
Oh, God, I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I think I was just scared. She walks up to the projector to like face the kids, and then they do this creepy head tilt, which is horrifying. And then when Ashley tilts her head, Mr. Boogie is behind her. He scoops her up and then walks toward the screen. Then he's in the screen walking down the hall. Their tape is called House Painting 12, added to the black box. And as the camera pans out, there's one last jump scene of Mr. Boogie popping out in front of the screen.
Yeah.
And what did you say about this?
Okay. So, yeah, before I get into my overall thoughts on the ending, that last jump scare, I hated it. And there's a scare earlier in the movie during that sequence with all the kids. You see this shot of a girl in a raincoat down the hallway. And it's creepy. She's like behind Ethan Hawke. He doesn't see her, and it's creepy. But then they turn into a jump scare by just like a quick, immediate pan to a close-up of her face and like a shriek of violins. And it's just out of nowhere. Cause, like,
that's the one that scared me, right?
No. That was after the one that scared you.
Oh, okay.
It served no purpose because she wasn't moving. That jump was there just to make you jump. It wasn't like a scary thing that was happening. And it took me right out of the movie. And this was the same thing. And yeah, I know where you're going with this because it's pretty funny because I said to Briana when we don't talk too much about the movie, as you could tell by our bickering about the couple's dynamics here. We don't talk about it before we do the podcast because we want it to be a conversation. But I was talking to her just about how I hate that kind of scare because like I call them like producer's notes because they always they seem to be something that some producer was like, oh, let's do this to scare people, and it's not organically in the story and it just doesn't fit, and I hate it. And turns out this was a producer's note.
I was so happy to read this. This was last night when I was doing my notes. I was like, I can't wait to tell you this.
Yeah, I felt vindicated. I'm sorry that I ruined it for you because I read it as well, but I felt vindicated. So I've got my notes here. I said it was gratuitous, stupid, takes you out of the moment. I'm just going to start calling those types of scares producer's notes because they happen so much. But then according to the commentary, Summit executive Eric Feig is said to be to blame for it. To be fair, Derrickson did have final cut, so ultimately it was his call, but he suggested it, and both him and Cargill liked it as a relief to diffuse the tension of an otherwise downbeat and heavy ending, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Because that is a heavy ending.
It is.
And just to go back on that, like, I love the ending to this movie.
Me too.
I generally, as most horror movies, I don't like this kind of ending because, we've talked about it many times before, just how frustrated I am with, the franchising of horror and things like that. And generally these kind of endings seem tacked on just to leave the door open for a sequel. But that did not come across at all. This ending was completely organic to the story, and it fit, and it didn't take away from it. And it's really rare to see a good horror movie that also has a good ending. Yeah.
So the review I'm going to read also said that like this kind of sets up a sequel, but I didn't look at it as that. I mean, obviously it certainly can. Theoretically, you can make a sequel out of anything, but I thought it was a really, really good ending.
Completely agreed. there was no like cynical like cash grab sequel feel to it at all. It just fit.
It's kind of funny too, because while you're like, this all started because of a missing girl, and it almost seems like the focus of this movie is not this missing girl at all. It is Ellison coming across these tapes and trying to figure out what's happening, and then subsequently being haunted and taken over by them. But it wraps it up with her. So in the end, we get what happened to her. She is dead. Yeah, it just wraps it up perfectly. Like, you weren't thinking about her the whole time, but there she is the whole time.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Let's talk about some reviews. I did not go with Roger Ebert, though I did read his. I didn't like his review. It was really, really long, and I didn't see what he rated it as, how many stars he gave it, I should say, but I don't think he liked it.
It's also worth pointing out this was towards the end of his life. He died the year after this movie came out.
Oh, okay. Well, he did make a funny point, though, that I just wanted to share. So he says, quote, almost all the action occurs at night. Even when the power seems to be working, Ellison, for no reason, prefers to creep around the house and climb into the attic carrying a small flashlight, which serves only to make him a target to anything that might be waiting in the dark. All through Sinister, you keep thinking, switch on the lights, fool, which I had to share because that was literally me the entire time.
Yeah, she made several comments about it.
And the review I did go with was from The Hollywood Reporter. So just a couple paragraphs here. They say, a true crime author stumbles onto something beyond his beat in Scott Derrickson's Sinister, which follows Ethan Hawke's Ellison Oswald as he grows increasingly obsessed with a missing girl case he hopes will lead to a best-selling book. Occasionally stupid, stretching even fright flick conventions, but scary nonetheless, the pick should please horror fans. It also says Derrickson borrows the vibe of Joel Schumacher's AMM. Do you know what that is? As Hawke, swigging whiskey and giving the crease between his eyebrows a workout, struggles with the horrible things he's seeing. But the film soon shifts into bump in the night mode, with an unseen visitor leaving clues for Oswald in his own house and taunting him with increasingly unsettling and harder to explain stunts. Setting aside Oswald's infuriating unwillingness to turn on the lights when homicidal intruders infiltrate his home at midnight, the movie has him doing some pretty unjustifiably dumb things, like walking with a butcher knife thrust in front of him when he has every reason to think his sleepwalking young son might leap out at him. Great points.
Just a quick addition to go back a little bit. The film is 8mm.
Oh, I wondered that, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
so
I misheard you. I thought you said AMM.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 8mm. I have seen that. It's a great Nicolas Cage movie about like a snuff film on 8mm.
Oh, okay. The scares are effective throughout, helped by a good deal by Christopher Young's glitchy electronic score. While the end clearly points toward a possible franchise, though, many of the ingredients that make Sinister compelling wouldn't make sense a second time around. Some of them barely hold up for the first, and that's how it ends. Now, I wanted to include that paragraph for two reasons, because first, it gave credit to the score by Christopher Young, which, I mean, it really was amazing, especially actually coming off of Blair Witch, which had no score. This one really, really stood out. But I thought it was interesting that they think it sets up a franchise, but also wouldn't work. But you say otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the sequel's a good movie. I mean, it's not groundbreaking or anything, but it's a good movie, and Deputy So-and-so is a nice character in it, and it brings back enough familiarity, but adds a couple twists to it with the children in the movie are twin brothers.
Yeah.
And it's enjoyable. It's on Netflix. Go watch it. Have fun.
I also have a couple fun facts related to deleted scenes. This one is from Screen Rant. Now, first of all, the article from Screen Rant was titled "Every Deleted Scene from Sinister." They talk about one, and that's it. So that simply can't be true.
I mean, maybe there's only one deleted scene.
No, because I have two from another article. Or I have one from Screen Rant and one from another article. So one thing that they deleted was an entire character. Sinister runs at 109 minutes, though it was originally much longer. The original cut of the movie featured an entire character that was removed from the theatrical version. It's of the next-door neighbor, who was written specifically for actress Angela Bettis. Are you familiar with her at all? Me either. She was featured in two big scenes, standing outside talking to Ellison. Her lines offered a lot of background story. She talks about her experience and her knowledge of the murders of the family that used to live in the house and give her interpretation of what happened. What's more, she adds some humor to it because she plays that classic kind of disgruntled neighbor and uses sarcasm and dark humor when she talks. Her scenes also give viewers a chance to escape the bubble of the Oswald household, which I thought was a really great point because, and maybe this movie is just unique because everything's happening in one place for the most part. Like, it does feel very contained. Scott Derrickson said that it was cut due to pacing issues and they would have significantly extended the time of the film, running longer than, like the average horror movie. He also said that the special features we're most proud of are the 2 deleted scenes with Angela Bettis. And they're not small scenes, they're big scenes. We wrote them expressly with her in mind. We love her as an actress. She knocked the scenes out of the park. They were well shot and well acted and worked as individual scenes. But when we were cutting the film, they just didn't need to be there to tell the story, and they broke the spell of the movie. On another article, they got rid of another tape entirely. So there was like another reel that he was supposed to find.
Yeah, I did read about that one too.
It was footage of a family at Christmas, and it was out in the woods. The scene was cut for financial reasons, but Derrickson and Cargill were okay with that. Cargill said, "The thing that we created was grimmer and a bit more dark and grisly than it was frightening. It was a little out of step with everything else, and I think ultimately it was a good cut for the better of the movie because it was just a little too dark."
Yeah, I mean, that's, have you ever... Well, no, of course you haven't seen The Shining.
Surely not.
But yeah, I mean, a family freezing to death is it's pretty grim and don't want to see it.
Yeah. All good. All right. So what is your jump score for this?
This one is going to get a 7. I was going to give it an 8, but I'm actually taking away a couple points because of how choreographed and awful a couple of them were.
Yeah.
But it's got some really good, solid, effective jump scares. What do you think?
I gave it a 7 as well.
Yeah?
Yep.
All right.
Nightlight factor.
I mean, for me personally, not much, but generally probably about a 7 or 8. This is a good one.
You think 8 is not much?
No. For me, not much, but for generally speaking.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah. No, for me, 2.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Like I said, for me personally, maybe a 4. The drowning scene kind of sticks with me a little bit. And some general, spookiness too about like ghost children down dark hallways.
Yeah, this was an 8. I was afraid. Everyone, I was afraid. I am currently afraid, as you saw when the Amazon man came. Scaredy cat score. So all that being said, this was a 7. This was definitely the scariest movie we've watched, hands down, no contest. Scariest movie I've ever seen. And I don't regret it, but it was scary. And then a new score. So we introduced this last week, but again, no one heard it. Because Jason doesn't understand the scoring model that we have going here. Again, my Scaredy Cat score is just how scary I found it to be and not reflecting of the quality of the film. So we have a new score. It's the Neophyte score. And this is a reflection of the quality of the film. So, similar to, you didn't give your horror buff score.
I'll do it after.
Okay. I gave it an 8. And what was your horror buff score?
Same, 8. This had the bones of a 9. This could have really been something. But a couple missteps for me just kind of knock it down a little bit. But this is a fun movie. I'm never going to complain about watching this movie. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never watch it again, but it was a really good movie.
Yeah, she will. She will.
I won't.
So what are we watching next week?
Okay, so next week we are watching The Lodge.
The Lodge, it's a movie I've never seen. I've heard good, creepy things. It came out a couple years ago, and I heard it's really good. So we discussed it, and I'm going to watch it twice this week. So I'm going to watch it once before I watch it with Briana. That way, if there's anything too terrible, I can give her a little bit of a heads up.
Thank you.
But I'm excited to watch it. It's a movie I've been wanting to watch, and it's a Christmas/winter themed one.
Yeah.
We've been trying to, stick to themes. We were going to do Pilgrim for Thanksgiving, which is part of Hulu's Into the Dark collaboration with Blumhouse. But because of the holiday and the technical issues and the travel, it just didn't work out. But that said, we're going to be watching The Lodge, and then we've got a couple more Christmas movies coming your way.
Yeah, exactly. We'll let you know those as each week. But that's all we have, I think. So
yeah, really good to be back. This was great to record, and I'm hoping, unlike last week, you guys can listen to this one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to have to say it a third time.
I'm so scared. But thank you for listening. Thanks for the follows. Make sure you're following and subscribing. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Oh, and we were interviewed. So I did talk about this on the Thanksgiving post that I did make, if you haven't listened to that. But just to reiterate, we were interviewed by Chewy from the Exploring Myths Behind Legends podcast. So if you haven't listened to that podcast itself, go ahead and listen to it. But we were interviewed on Twitter Spaces, which I didn't even know existed. And it was really fun. We talked about horror movies and podcasting, and me being the one who doesn't know anything about horror, I ended up having a lot more to say than I thought I would. That will be coming out on their feed on Tuesday. So it's out now because you're getting this on Thursday. So we'll have posted about this and everything, but please give that a listen and give the podcast itself a listen so we can support each other out there. Make sure to follow and subscribe like we said, and thanks. We'll see you next week.
Bye.